Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Moment of Hope with Upward Transitions. I'm Carla Stinnett, and today we're very excited to have our special guest from the Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma. Let's bring Greg Beban on and say good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Carla.
So glad to have you, and thank you for joining us this morning to share a little bit of information about Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma and what you do in our community. So let's just, dig right in there. Tell us how Legal Aid started. What was the founding, how that began?
Well, Legal Aid in Oklahoma, which provides, civil legal assistance in civil cases, it came from bar associations. It started with attorneys recognizing the gap in services for people who could not afford an attorney in non-criminal cases. In the 50s, I think 1954, I got to look at notes, but 1954, the Tulsa County Bar Association started a group to provide volunteer attorneys in certain cases. In 1955, Oklahoma County Bar Association started a similar group. Then a few years later, some federal funding became available in some rural counties in Northeast Oklahoma and then in Southeast Oklahoma, joined the fight and created their own programs. Those programs merged with the larger counties. And then for a while, we had Legal Aid Services of Western Oklahoma and Legal Aid Services of Eastern Oklahoma. And then in 2002, they merged. And now we have Legal Aid Services of all of Oklahoma. So the same organization covers all 77 counties. We represent people in tribal courts. We represent people in administrative courts. We represent people in all sorts of settings. So yeah, that's the history of where we started and where we are here today.
Okay, and in your bio, you talk about that you've been with Legal Aid since 2009, and that this is where you represent indigent clients in a variety of general civil litigation cases. So tell us about your role on what you do for clients there.
Right. In general, Legal Aid Services of Oklahoma in particular, one of our top priorities, for instance, is representing victims of domestic violence. We do a lot of family law cases. We do a lot of divorces, protective orders, and custody cases. And that's one of our top priorities all across the state. Another top priority is housing, fighting for access to housing and defending people's access to housing. So we do a lot of eviction work, especially during the pandemic. We've ramped up our eviction defense teams, especially here in Oklahoma County, where we now attend every single eviction docket. And if somebody needs an attorney, even if they haven't applied with us ahead of time, they can apply with us at the docket because we'll have enough attorneys there to help the people who need it. We also have priorities for certain demographics. For seniors, we try to at least provide legal advice and representation. For veterans, we have special grants for veterans. We also embed ourselves in certain areas of the community. We have a number of medical legal partnerships where we work with healthcare providers, where physicians will identify stressors for their clients. And one of the most stressful situations are legal situations, whether it's a family law case or facing eviction, or you have a landlord who's not making repairs. Accessing our free legal representation to find solutions to those problems relieves the stress on the patient and creates better medical outcomes for people. So we have a number of medical legal partnerships, and then we have partnerships with community or with members of the community. For instance, outside of just doing eviction prevention work right now, I also try to work with people experiencing homelessness by going to the day shelter and doing intakes at the day shelter. And I don't get there as often as I would like to. Before the pandemic, I was there on a much more regular basis, and we're trying to get back there now. And of course, from there, we take part in meetings. I personally am part of the Coalition in Poverty and part of the Governor's Interagency Council on Homelessness. And groups like that are great ways to collaborate, to find out what's going on with other organizations, to find out what services other organizations provide that'll help our clients, and to tell the other organizations about the services we provide so that we can help their clients too.
So do most of your clients come from central Oklahoma, or are they rural, or where are they? Most of them are central?
Well, by volume, yeah, but it's, it tracks with the population. We do cover all 77 counties, and we have a statewide application hotline, and we have a website where anybody can apply no matter where they are. And so people have access to us no matter where they are in the state, and we take cases no matter where they are in the state. We have offices spread out, all across the state. And, here in Oklahoma County, our Oklahoma City office covers 2 counties. We have some offices that cover a much bigger area, but those attorneys will travel and will go to court as needed, no matter where the case is in the state.
Do we as an agency, Upward Transition works with low income and people who are at risk of becoming homeless, as well as those who are already experiencing homelessness. But we try to interrupt that cycle of poverty if possible. And we do lots of collaboration with other agencies in the community, with legal aid being one of a very important partner that we work with to serve our clients. So, when you serve clients at legal aid, what role does poverty play? I mean, I know you're helping low income, but is there something in that cycle of poverty that contributes to legal problems? Or
Yes, yeah. Immediately just thinking about housing, there are people get taken advantage of with housing situations, whether it's a landlord who isn't making repairs. And we think there are landlords who refuse to make repairs because they know if this person who is so desperate for housing that they and lacks the resources to pay for better housing, they lack the resources to find new housing. The landlord will just decide, well, I don't need to hurry up and fix the heat or fix this major plumbing issue that's going to be really expensive because this person's not going anywhere. And even if they do go somewhere, there's other desperate people who will come and rent this uninhabitable apartment from me. Poverty keeps people trapped in these bad situations. And with housing, we see that with domestic violence. Victims, domestic violence isn't just an anger or violence issue, it's a control issue. And part of that control is limiting the options for the victim to get away, controlling the victim through limiting their access to money, limiting their access to solutions, to other housing, to getting away. So poverty will keep people in bad situations in that way too.
Yeah, and not to mention that there is a desperate shortage of affordable housing in our community. I know the mayor's task force, they're all looking at this and trying to search the community and the different community leaders, how they feel we can solve this problem with having this shortage of affordable housing, which contributes to us not being able to find places for our clients to live. So in looking at how we collaborate together, what are some of the things that you can talk about that legal aid collaborates with Upward Transitions on?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind after working with individuals experiencing homelessness at the day shelter, and you guys' office is right around the corner from there, is IDs, getting people valid state IDs. It's difficult to get an ID for some people. Frankly, even, whether it's access to funding for the fees, or whether it's because over time they lost their original documents, they can't get a birth certificate, or somehow, you'd be surprised the number of people who were born with a certain name, and then at a young age, their parents started calling them something different. Their school records don't match up with their birth certificate. Their social security card doesn't match up with their birth certificate. There's no nefarious reason to it. It's just back in the day, it used to not be a big deal. But then post 9/11, especially, the ID laws became more and more strict. It's harder to get an ID than it was in the past. And you'll see that with people experiencing homelessness. If they don't have an ID, They can't get into housing. They can't get into subsidized housing. They can't get a job to make their own income. And it's a major problem. And I definitely know Upward Transitions is a great resource for that. They've got caseworkers and they've got funds available to help people apply for the documents they need, get those mailed here, and get those into the DHS to get or DPS rather, to get a valid ID. And it goes both ways, though. I know caseworkers at Upward Transitions who will refer clients to me, particularly difficult clients where those documents don't match up. Say the birth certificate doesn't match up with the Social Security card. We can do, sometimes it's necessary to do a name change to officially change the name so that we can get a Social Security card in a different name with the court order so that it matches up with the birth certificate, and then that person can go get an ID. And so, I'll refer people to Upward Transitions for some things, and they'll refer people back to me for other things. And it's a really good collaboration.
It is. And that's, one of the wonderful things about our Central Oklahoma community is that the nonprofit agency world, we all work together and collaborate. And it's actually a unique situation in comparison to other cities our size, that we have this Oklahoma standard that even permeates through the nonprofit world too. And, we look at each other and determine what our core strengths are. And one of ours is researching for these birth certificates for clients or those who are experiencing homelessness. So we research internationally, even trying to find birth certificates for some of the clients that we serve. And as you mentioned, every once in a while there's a hiccup, and we have to call upon legal aid, our friends at legal aid, to help us out to solve some problems. But and that's one of your first step barriers to getting people off the streets. They got to have ID, like you said, or they can't get housing or jobs, or they can't get any of the other social services that they need. So we really appreciate all the work and the effort that legal aid and your team, the work that you do with our clients, and we love working with you, and we enjoy having you as a community partner, as far as because it really helps us serve our clients better too.
Yeah, beneficial for everybody. It helps us a lot to have
it's the win-win. It creates that win-win for not only the agency but the client and everyone involved. But just in closing, we're almost out of time. Do you have a legal aid client story that you would like to share? This is how we like to close our moment of hope, is a client story that's been, successful and the services have helped them.
Well, yeah, there's one that sticks out that's fairly recent, and it's a housing issue. And we'll see, I think case managers, especially housing case managers, will recognize that there are some bad housing situations that come up. One of them that we see that really targets desperate people, and it targets them with the lure of owning your home one day, is there are some property management companies that will offer a rent-to-own contract to lower income individuals, people who probably couldn't go to a bank and get a mortgage on their own. Well, they jump into these rent-to-own contracts, but the rent-to-own contracts are pretty unfair to the tenant/home buyer, because a lot of times they're uninhabitable homes, and they'll put the burden on the tenant to make all the repairs, because they'll say, hey, one of these days you'll own this property, so you can go ahead and start taking care of it. Mm-hmm. And then but at the same time, if the tenant falls behind in rental payments or housing payments, whatever the contract might call it, the contract will usually say, well, I can just evict you. I don't have to go through the longer process of foreclosure. So the tenant, the client, our client, isn't getting the benefit of being a tenant or being a home buyer. The sort of contract carves its way out to give all the benefits to the seller/landlord. So we had a particular case like this. The client called us after the eviction hearing already took place. Their landlord actually told them that you don't need to go there. You don't need to go to court. I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. And then landlord went and got a default judgment the tenant got the notice from the sheriff that they were about to be locked out in 48 hours. And this particular client, her name's Maria. She had lived in this house for years, had done her own repairs, had been fixing it, repairing it herself, stuff that you would not do if you were a normal tenant. She was even paying property taxes, definitely something a normal tenant would not do. She paid a large down payment, way more money than what a security deposit would have been. And she paid a bunch of money over time that was probably above market for rent, that she should not have been out of pocket if this landlord/seller was just going to try to evict her and deceive her and try to evict her, deceive her by saying, oh, don't worry about going to court. You don't need to do that. So she called us. We got involved. We filed a motion to vacate to stop the eviction. And then we filed an answer claiming an ownership interest. Had it removed to a different level of court. We filed a big counterclaim against this landlord. This landlord then hired an attorney, and they decided they would enter into negotiations. And we were able to reinstate the contract basically at a lower rate. The client is going to pay a little bit less than what she would have, and she'll be paid off in a few months. And the house is going to be in her name because we were able to step in and get involved. But she was a few hours from being locked out by the sheriff to now getting the house in her name finally. No more housing payment once this is done, and fulfilling her the American dream of getting the home in her name. So that was a pretty satisfying case.
Yeah. And unless you receive legal counsel or the clients receive legal counsel in these situations, they don't really even know any better. They don't know their rights. They don't know.
Yeah, some landlords will tell tenants that, oh, you have to be out at this time or this or that. And they'll just, sometimes I think tenants take their word for it.
They kind of get railroaded in the situation. So
yeah.
Well, that's wonderful news. That's a wonderful story about your client. And, those are the wins that really help us keep going to know that there's hope to meet the needs of these clients. And there is a way and a solution to help them. And we look forward to working together with Legal Aid in the future and continuing our wonderful collaboration that we have going. And Greg, we just appreciate so much you being with us today, and thank you for being our special guest. And we will say goodbye to everyone today, and we'll just say we'll see you all next week. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Carla.
See everyone later next week.